Test 4. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a staff member from Gaia's Guardians and a man who wants to do something to protect the environment. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, how may I help you?
Well, I've been seeing these yellow boxes in front of a lot of houses in my neighborhood. Just wondered what they were for. I noticed your phone number on all of them, so I called. Could you tell me about your business?
We do recycling, but we're not a business. Gaia's Guardians is a non-profit group. We encourage recycling as a way of protecting the environment.
I don't know. I mean, it is a good idea, but I really don't read the newspaper every day or anything.
And we don't come collect newspapers every day. In fact, we only do pickups every other week.
Oh, well, then maybe I could help. I mean, in my neighborhood, there's too much rubbish lying around everywhere. I'd like to help out, I guess.
That's great, sir. You're doing the right thing. Okay, I need to get your contact information. What's your name, please?
Peter Wisrow.
Peter, how do you spell your last name? W-I-S-R-O-W?
No, actually, it's W-I-S-R-O-U-G-H.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a terrible speller.
You're a good speller. It's just that my family are terrible pronouncers.
You're quite a card, Peter. Okay, now what's your address?
Number 168 Bridge Road. That's here in London. How about if I have any questions?
I'm sending you a copy of our booklet too. The booklet has our phone number and our email address, helpline@blackcat.com. That's HELPLINE at BLACKCAT.com. But I nearly forgot to ask, what's your postcode?
BS9 7PU.
PS97BU?
No, that's B as in boy, S9 7P as in Peter, U.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
So I'm guessing those yellow boxes I saw are for recycled newspapers.
Yes, that is correct, and it's free of charge.
Wow, that's good news. Do you recycle anything besides newspaper?
Oh yes, we recycle most everything. Glass, plastic, paper.
Oh, so I can put like glass and plastic bottles in the box.
Sorry again. Things like that you have to bring to our collection centre.
And where is that?
Our main centre isn't that far from you. It's actually right on the east side of Central Park.
That new blue building?
That's the one.
Cool. Hey, what's with all those different colored boxes outside that place?
Oh, that's for the different materials we recycle. The blue is for metal, the green is for glass and plastics, and the yellow, of course, is for paper.
Okay, I'll try and manage to keep all that straight.
Oh, no need. They're each labelled.
Great. So which one would I put magazines in?
Actually, they don't go in any of the bins. Unfortunately, magazines can't be recycled because of the material they're made of. It's such a waste. So, would you be interested in volunteering?
I'll think about it. Could you send me some more info?
Absolutely. Along with the newspaper box, I'll be sending you our booklet, Savvy. That is SAVVY. It tells you about what you can do to protect the environment in your daily life. Plus, it lists things you can do as a volunteer with our group.
Hey, that's cool. Thanks.
My pleasure. Do you have any other questions or concerns?
Nope, that's it.
That is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear an introductory talk about a new agricultural park. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Welcome to Greenvale Agricultural Park. As you know, we've only been open a week, so you're amongst our first visitors. We have lots of fascinating indoor and outdoor exhibits on our huge complex, spreading hundreds of hectares. Our remit is to give educational opportunities to the wider public, as well as to offer research sites for a wide variety of agriculturists and other scientists. Let's start by seeing what there is to do. As you can see here on our giant wall plan, we are now situated in the reception block here. As you walk out of the main door into the park, there's a path you can follow. If you follow this route, you'll immediately come into the rare breeds section, where we keep a wide variety of animals, which I shall be telling you a little more about later. Next to this, moving east, is the large grazing area for the rare breeds. Then further east, in the largest section of our park, is the forest area. South of the grazing area, and in fact just next to the reception block, is our experimental crop area. In the middle of the park, this circular area, is our lake. These two small rectangular shapes here are the fish farms where we rear fish for sale. To the east of those is the marsh area, which attracts a great many migrant birds. In the southeastern corner, beyond the marsh, is our market garden area, growing vegetables and flowers.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
All these areas can be visited by the general public for almost all the year. Although, please take note of the large signs at the entrance to each area, which tell you when certain areas are being used for particular controlled experiments and are therefore temporarily out of bounds to the public. You can see for yourself what a huge area the park covers, and a key question is always, how can we move around? Well, you have a choice of means, all environmentally friendly. Cars are banned in the park. We have bicycles, which you can hire behind the reception block here. The healthy ones of you can go on foot. And finally, there's our electric tram, powered from solar cells. You find more information about this at the front entrance. A good place to start on your tour is the rare breed section. We keep goats, sheep and hens and other kinds of poultry. We're also thinking of bringing in cows and horses, but we do not as yet have facilities for these bigger animals. The animals are fed in public twice a day, and a short lecture given on their feeding habits and nutritional needs. These are very popular with the public, but of course we mustn't lose sight of the main purpose of having this section, not as such to preserve rare animals, but to maintain the diversity of breeds, to broaden the gene pool for agricultural development. Greenvale changes with the seasons, with different events happening at different times of the year. May will be perhaps our most spectacular month, with the arrival of the Canada geese, and when our fruit trees will be in full blossom. But there are interesting events on all year round. For example, John Havers, our expert fly fisherman, is currently giving displays on the lake. Each of the sections has its own seasonal calendar, and please consult the summary board at the main entrance. And the final section, as we return to the reception blocks, is the orchard. Do take time to browse round our shop. There's a wide selection of books on wildlife, some of them written by local authors, and the history of farming, including organic farming, something which the park will be diversifying into in the coming months.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a man called Frank talking to Dr. Lindsay about what he should study if and when he returns for further classes. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, are you Dr. Lindsay, the returning students advisor?
Yes, that's right. Are you Frank? Your appointment wasn't until 2, but that's okay. Please come in and have a seat.
Thanks. I like to arrive early whenever I have anything to do.
That's certainly a praiseworthy habit. Let me see. It looks like you've taken a long break from school, and I understand you wanted to have a chat about what you should study if and when you return for further classes.
It's such a big challenge. I don't know if I'm crazy for doing this or not.
Believe it or not, I know exactly what you mean. Before I began working here at the university, I taught primary school for nearly 10 years. It takes a lot of courage to go back to school.
I feel more shy and scared than the primary students I teach. In the schools I taught, I found today's youngsters are very sure of themselves. In terms of intelligence, I have a lot to teach them, and the maturity level of much of my class leaves something to be desired. But in terms of confidence, wow, a lot more confident than I am now, that's for sure.
Stop fretting. A brave man is a coward who refuses to run. Let's talk about your strong points. You seem an intelligent man. What is it you would like to study?
You see, I've been teaching children for a few years, but I think I'm happier teaching adults.
I think teaching students in middle school is much more satisfying because they end up being much more grateful for your work. If I may ask, what got you interested in teaching adults?
A lot of things, I guess. I met my future wife back in my first year of college. She always complains that I was more interesting then. She says that now I talk like I'm 7 years old. That's probably from being with children all day.
Again, I know just what you mean. My husband used to say the same thing about me when I taught kindergarten. Anything else?
Well, yes. Fairly often now I run into former students and we talk. Some of them are getting close to being grown up. I guess I think more and more about how people develop over time. So I'm interested in the results of education, the final stages.
I see. Well, coming back to the university can be both difficult and very rewarding. There are some problems unique to returning students, older students like yourself. What do you think is your greatest weakness?
Well, I actually think my confidence is getting better. I'm definitely overcoming my introversion and starting to be much more comfortable in front of a class. To tell you the truth, I'm afraid I'm rather behind the times about many things. It's more difficult for me to chase after the popular things youngsters are fond of, such as iPhone, Twitter, if you name it.
I think I understand.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
How old are you, 35? People at your age still go back to school for further education. I was a bit the same way. I mean, I didn't study at university till after I had a family, a husband and one child. My point of view was a lot different from your average 18-year-old girls, I can tell you.
Gee, that sounds pretty rough. A family and college? Clearly you weren't unsuccessful, though.
It was, Frank, it truly was. My first term at school was extremely stressful. But, excuse me, you're not here to listen to my life story. We're talking about your plans. Is there anything unique I should know about you or your past experience or plans?
I'm afraid not. There is nothing interesting about my career or plans. It's really not too impressive.
Now, I forbid you to talk like that. This is your one life, and if you're not interested, why bother living it? Don't be so humble, Frank.
Okay. My wife says I'm a wimp.
Let's talk about your dreams a bit. You want to teach adults, you said. What would you like to teach them?
Well, when I first came to college, I really liked languages and literature. A lot of people have told me that for practical reasons, it would be more rewarding to choose business management as my major. But I made up my mind to study liberal arts once I got the idea of going back to school.
I must say it's refreshing to meet someone who knows there's more to an education than computers and finance. Let's have a look at the university course catalogue.
Excuse me, Dr. Lindsay, before we do that, could I maybe ask you some questions about changes in university life? I think I need to discuss that so I know what to expect.
Of course, I'm here to help you. The biggest thing to get used to is the change in technology. Professors present things on huge screens, many of which are interactive computerized whiteboards. You can write on them still and use them like a touchscreen. They're really handy. No more sloppy scribbled notes on the projector. Let's see, I doubt you'll be living in student housing, so I won't go into all the improvements there. Another major change that you'll enjoy is the plethora of resources available for students. As a student, you have 24-hour access to the gym and library privileges that include the use of school computers to scan, copy and print, and of course the media library, which contains movies from all genres and most of the movies listed on AFI's top 100 movies of all time. The dining facilities are also not what they used to be. They offer choices for all diets, and you can expect a hot meal any time of day.
Wow, things really have changed. I'll be sure to utilise all those great facilities in my time here. Thanks for all your help, Dr. Lindsay. I think that's all the questions I have for now.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear a student called Shona giving a presentation on her research report. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been doing some research into what people in Britain think of doctors, the ones who work in general practice, the first call for medical care, and comparing this with the situation in a couple of other countries. I want to talk about the rationale behind what I decided to do. Now, I had to set up my program of research in 3 different countries, so I approached postgraduates in my field in overseas departments, contacting them by email to organize things for me at their end. I thought I would have trouble recruiting help, but in fact, everyone was very willing, and sometimes their tutors got involved too. I had to give my helpers clear instructions about what kind of sample population I wanted them to use. I decided that people under 18 should be excluded because most of them are students or looking for their first job. And also I decided at this stage just to focus on men who were in employment and set up something for people who didn't have jobs and for employed women later on as a separate investigation. I specifically wanted to do a questionnaire and interviews with a focus group. With the questionnaire, rather than limiting it to one specific point, I wanted to include as much variety as possible. I know questionnaires are a very controlled way to do things, but I thought I could do taped interviews later on to counteract the effects of this. And the focus group may also prove useful in future by targeting subjects I can easily return to, as the participants tend to be more involved. So I'm just collating the results now. At the moment, it looks as if in the UK, despite the fact that newspapers continually report that people are unhappy with medical care, in fact, it is mainly the 3rd level of care, which takes place in hospitals, that they are worried about. Government reforms have been proposed at all levels, and although their success is not guaranteed, long-term hospital care is in fact probably less of an issue than the media would have us believe. However, I've still got quite a bit of data to look at. Certainly, I will need to do more far-reaching research than I had anticipated in order to establish if people want extra medical staff invested in the community, or if they want care to revert to fewer but larger key medical units. The solution may well be something that can be easily implemented by those responsible in local government, with central government support, of course. This first stage has proved very valuable, though. I was surprised by how willing most of the subjects were to get involved in the project. I had expected some unwillingness to answer questions honestly, but I was taken aback and rather concerned that something I thought I'd set up very well didn't necessarily seem that way to everyone in my own department. I thought you might also be interested in some of the problems I encountered in collecting my data. There were odd cases that threw me. One of the subjects, who I had approached while he was out shopping in town, decided to pull out when it came to the second round. It was a shame, as it was someone who I would like to have interviewed more closely. And one of the first-year students I interviewed wanted reassurance that no names would be traceable from the answers. I was so surprised, because they think nothing of telling you about themselves and their opinions in seminar groups. Then one of the people that I worked with got a bit funny. The questions were quite personal, and one minute he said he'd do it, then the next day he wouldn't. And in the end, he did do it. It's hard not to get angry in that situation, but I tried to keep focused on the overall picture in order to stay calm. The most bizarre case was a telephone interview I did with a teacher at a university in France. He answered all my questions in great detail, but then when I asked how much access he had to dangerous substances, he wouldn't tell me exactly what his work involved. It was a real eye-opener.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.